In the last 105 runnings of the Indianapolis 500, the Brickyard has been no stranger to controversy. From the results of a race not being declared official until months after the checkered flag, to only allowing 8 non-full-time entries to qualify, the race has just about seen it all. So here are 4 of the most controversial moments in Indianapolis 500 history. Relief drivers not credited for winning. As you can imagine, there were quite a few things different about the first running of the 500 in 1911. With an average speed of 74 miles an hour, the race took 6 hours and 42 minutes to complete. Compare that with the record of 187 miles an hour in 2013 that took 2 hours and 40 minutes to complete. Much like an endurance race, drivers often relied on relief drivers to accompany them. The Marmot Wasp that ultimately won the 1911 race is often talked about for being the first single-seat car. But what isn't talked about is that, like most drivers in that era, Ray Haroon still relied on a relief driver. That driver was Cyrus Patchke, who took over driving duties on lap 70 and took the car from 7th to 1st place. Due to some scoring confusion, it's unknown when Haroon re-entered the car, but it seems to be around lap 102 to 105. Not only did Patchke drive the Marmot Wasp, but he also relieved for Joe Dawson in the second Marmon car, which he drove up to 2nd place. Now, of course, Ray Haroon held on to 1st to win, and Joe Dawson would encounter a hole punch in the radiator that dropped his car to 5th. But with such an impressive drive, why was Cyrus Patchke not credited for winning the Indianapolis 500? It's because in 1912, the AAA, which was then Indy Racing's sanctioning body, deemed the driver who started the race was the driver who would be credited with the victory, which totally canceled any chance of Cyrus Patchke being credited for winning the 500. Now, what's interesting is if you've ever seen the faces on the Borg Warner Trophy, or have ever looked at records who won the 500, you will notice that in 1924 and in 1941, which both ran under AAA sanction, have co-champions. That's because in both instances, the driver who started the race was pulled in the middle of the race, but did not finish the race. When Joe Boyer won in 1924, Laura Coram was the driver who was starting the race. And initially, after Boyer won, only Coram was credited for winning. After some negotiating, the officials decided the rules would be bent enough to declare Boyer and Coram the first co-champions of the race. But because in 1911, Cyrus Patchke did not start or finish the race, Ray Haroon was the only driver credited to win. Now, throughout the 500's history, there are many instances of this happening. Cyrus Patchke is not the only co-driver who completed miles in the race in the winning car and is not credited for winning. In 1923, Howdy Wilcox relieved Tommy Milton, who would go on to win the race, becoming the first ever driver to win multiple 500s. But Howdy Wilcox relieved Tommy Milton, and Howdy Wilcox already won the 500. He should also be the first multiple-time Indy 500 winner, but he's not. The most recent occurrence that this could have happened was, believe it or not, in 2004, when the race was stopped due to rain 22 laps in, and Jacques Lazier had to step in for Robbie Gordon when the race resumed because Robbie Gordon was attempting to run the Coke 600 that night. Sadly, Jacques Lazier DNF'd due to a broken axle, but if somehow Jacques would have pulled off that win, technically him and Robbie Gordon would have their faces on the Borg Warner Trophy, which is crazy to think about in the modern era. The 2002 finish.
I was good on fuel and everybody else was peeling off for stops with 6-7 laps to go, and the guys at the front were slowing way down to make it.
Yard breaks, less than 3 car lengths separate first and second place. Elio Castro Neves, Paul Tracy will go to the high side and wide. How much fuel does he have? We're going to find out. Castro Neves, then Tracy as fast as you can see it. That's the way they hit the second turn. The lead is down to 2.5 car lengths. Elio Castro Neves looking for 2 in a row. Paul Tracy has him in his sight. Oh, the qualifying struggle for Team Green, but boy, Paul Tracy looking good right now. A great back in 2 as Tracy tries to make the pass. He makes the pass to the North City head towards Princeton. Action is on the speedway. And Paul Tracy has made the pass. He's gotten around Castro Neves. Mikey, heads your way. Paul Tracy will take the yellow flag. It looks like he will win the Indianapolis 500 as the yellow and white are displayed.
Now, as far as controversy goes, the finish of the 2002 Indianapolis 500 is one that is still talked about amongst open-wheel fans daily, and I'm sure Paul Tracy still lays awake at night thinking about this one. With 2 laps remaining, Paul Tracy was catching Elio Castroneves after Elio had inherited the lead gambling on fuel nearly 40 laps earlier. You could almost guarantee Tracy was going to catch Elio and pass him. In turn 3 coming to the white flag, Paul Tracy made his move around the outside and very nearly completed the pass, and some say that he did complete the pass. But at the exact same time this was happening, happening, there was a crash in turn 2. Paul Tracy immediately started celebrating on the radio as he thought he'd passed Elio before the yellow, but just seconds later, the officials in race control, led by Brian Barnhart, stated in fact Castroneves was actually the leader. After the race, Paul Tracy immediately challenged the results. Castroneves began the argument that the only reason Paul got by him was because he lifted when the yellow came out. The official results came out nearly 5 hours after the race, declaring Elio Castroneves the winner and Paul Tracy second. Paul Tracy's team, Team Green, immediately filed a protest believing Paul Tracy was ahead before the caution came out, and a hearing was scheduled for May 27th at 10 a.m. During the 2-hour hearing, Brian Barnhart and other IRL officials denied the protests and presented their conclusions. Officials concluded that Elio Castroneves was indisputably the leader under the following relevant times. At the last scoring antenna entering turn 3 before caution, margin was 0.0371 seconds. At the time of the accident of Radon and Lazier in turn 2, at the time Barnhart made the radio call for caution, at the time the dashboard lights in the car were activated, and in rejecting the protest, Barnhart stated that, quote, Team Green did not present anything that was not inclusive enough to change our minds in any way, shape, or form. On July 2nd, 2002, nearly, keep in mind 2 months later, more like a month, Tony George issued an 18-page decision on the appeal. He upheld the victory of Elio Castroneves and denied Team Green's appeal. George stated that, quote, clearly Elio was in front when the call for the yellow was made, and that several of the caution signals, including trackside and dashboard lights, a radio announcement, and a flag closing the pits were displayed before Tracy's pass. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you think about the 2002 finish was that was only 6 years removed from the CART IRL split. That was shortly after teams from CART would make their return to the 500. Team Penske returned to the IRL full-time, while Team Green was still a CART team and they were there for the 500. Now, was there favoritism from the IRL, or did Elio Castroneves actually win the race?
Deep down inside, I thought, honestly, I felt that I got screwed, I walked away with, which in some people's mind would be a great accomplishment, a second place at Indianapolis, but my whole career is second place is the first loser in my eyes. It's all or nothing with me, and that's probably been the defining thing of my career.
The Great Dispute, 1981. Yes, the one where Mario Andretti still has the ring. 2002 was not the first time that the results have been challenged. In 1981, there were questions as to whether or not the winner was Bobby Unser or Mario Andretti. Unlike 2002, however, the results actually were reversed, then re-reversed, to the point where the wrong driver was the one who took the day after victory lane photos. Like I said, Mario Andretti has the ring. With around 50 laps to go, the yellow flag came out with Mario Andretti leading and Bobby Unser in second. Under the yellow, both Andretti and Unser came into the pits, with Unser's team getting the better of Andretti and beating them out of the pits. While leaving the pits, the rest of the field was pacing through turns 1 and 2, and what Bobby Unser did leaving the pits would spark controversy for decades to come.
Bobby out again, and Bobby going out he passed a car. What's he doing? Look at that, he's passed about half a dozen cars.
Oh, James, that's
under the yellow, you can't do that.
That is a no-no. He has accelerated probably in the haste of leaving the pit lane. He's certainly overtaken these other cars. I'm not sure why he did that. I know that...
One thing important to note here, that the ABC broadcast was tape delayed back then, which meant parts of the broadcast showing Unser exiting the pits had commentary that was recorded after the race. So it's not like the commentators noticed it live as it was happening. But as the race was happening, the stewards knew about Andretti's claim, but no observers had witnessed Unser's infraction, so no action was considered at the time. It's also important that the live radio broadcast had not mentioned the infraction as the race was live in progress. As you might already know, Bobby Unser went on to win the race with Mario Andretti in second.
Well, everything you've seen up to here was earlier today. Right now, it's just about 11:15 Indianapolis time. Jackie and I are in the booth with Mario Andretti, who finished second in the race today, or did he? Mario, I understand there is going to be a protest. Is that right?
Well, there is a protest in process, mainly because we're talking about the usual infraction of the rules. The one particular rule that we dwell on quite a bit during the private and also the public drivers' meetings are passing on the yellows. And this one instance, when Bobby and I were exiting the pits, I was right behind him, and there was a row of cars lined up behind the pace car. And obviously, when we reached that point past the pit wall, we are to blend in behind the car that we're alongside. And, I did so. In fact, I went right behind Foyt and Bobby just kept right on, and I just lost sight. He went about 7 or 8, 9 cars in front of me, and so I called in my chief, and I said, he passed just for the record, and so did John Cock.
So there will be a protest filed, and that can't take place officially, as I understand it, until 8 o'clock tomorrow morning when the official standings are posted. But there will be definitely a protest on this move. You were right behind him, and you had Bobby in your sight, so that you can tell the story for yourself. Now, Chris Economaki talked a little bit earlier to Tom Binford, who is the chief steward here, and the man who will be very much involved in the decision and, of course, in any hearings that will take place. So why don't you watch with us now this interview. Chris Economaki talking to Chief Steward Tom Binford.
With me is Thomas W. Binford, the Chief Steward of the Indianapolis 500, whose responsibilities include acting on protests. And a protest has been lodged by the Patrick Racing Team, contending that winner Bobby Unser passed cars illegally under the yellow flag. Tom, what's next?
Well, right now, during the race right now, and later on this evening, we will be reviewing all the facts in this case, as well as the entire results, and we'll post our official decision and results at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. That time, this unofficial protest will be accepted if they still want to place it. If we may decide in their favor before it even is official, we may not. If we don't, then they can file a protest and we'll have a hearing.
Okay, you're saying that you may decide to take action on this yourself. Passing under the yellow, what kind of a penalty or an adjustment might that incur?
It could incur as much as a one-lap penalty, which of course would take the victory away from Unser and present it to Mario Andretti.
Okay, so it's been a long day at the track for all of us, and it looks like it's going to be a long night for the officials.
Race officials spent the night reviewing the tapes, and at 8 a.m. Monday morning, the official results were posted and showed Bobby Unser was penalized 1 position for passing cars. Roger Penske, who was Unser's car owner, filed an appeal after the official results were posted, which had declared Andretti the winner. A hearing was held on June 12th of '81. It was pointed out that USAC allowed the alleged infraction to go unpenalized throughout the remainder of the race. Binford, the chief steward, stated that he did receive a complaint after lap 149, but the track observers had missed Unser's infraction, so he was powerless to act during the race. USAC was faced with a dilemma, as the rulebook was in fact unclear in regards to the blend rule. Officials mulled over the decision for months, and in October of 1981, a 3-member USAC appeals board voted 2-1 to reinstate the victory to Bobby Unser. He was instead just fined $40,000, but he won the Indianapolis 500, so what does $40,000 really even mean? Mario Andretti was the winner of the 1981 Indy 500 from May to October. Just think about that. Think about if that happened in modern day. An official of the USAC board told reporters 3 hours after the reinstatement of Unser's win, quote, "Based on what we've seen, Thomas Binford and the Indianapolis officials should have detected the infraction at the moment of it. By not penalizing Unser sooner, they automatically made the passes allowed because they failed in their responsibility to detect the infraction."
I disagree with everything that Mario said, with the exception of the very last part where he says USAC handled it very badly. They darn sure did do that. But at any rate, number one, the $40,000 that they fined me was merely to take up for the court costs that they'd had. They could do that because there's no rule to stop that. Number two, leaving the pits in the rule books went from the pits, and the exit of the pits was completely in turn 2. Tom Binford didn't understand racing. He never covered that. And I did read it. And plus, now let's just take the devil's advocate. Hang on just a minute. I had to be quiet for a minute. Let's take the devil's advocate. Let's just say that, for example, that I did pass those cars, incidentally, but that was legal. But let's just say that for some reason or another, they say that it isn't legal. You did exactly the same thing, and it's on tape, and also in all the scoring deals that showed up. So don't tell me that it's wrong for me, but it's right for Mario, because that doesn't fly.
Okay, fellas, hold on. You both will have plenty.
The 25-8 rule. While everything I've talked about so far is controversial, none of these moments left an impact on the sport quite like the 25-8 rule. I'm not going to go super in depth on how the split happened. That's been done a lot on YouTube. Go look at Empty Box. Go look up NASCAR Man History. Just look up the IndyCar Split on YouTube, and you'll see what I mean. I don't need to go in detail. There's books about it. Go buy the book. There is tons to read on the split. But what I'm talking about is mainly aimed towards the Indianapolis 500 itself. Now here's a brief look on how the split happened. so I don't have to go in full detail. I want power. Boy, I tell you, I want power. Just like that, there were 2 different IndyCar series in North America. That's exactly how we did it. What's important for this video is how the Indy 500 was torn apart from it, especially in 1996.
The hope is that this feud can be settled at least for one day a year for this race. The reality may be something very, very different.
Tony George, he's the one that's going to have to make a move. At this particular point, our people want to go to Indy. At the end of the day, we want to go on a level playing field.
Which is what the IRL says it is all about. But the CART divorce became inevitable when George reserved 25 of Indy's 33 slots for IRL car owners, the better to promote his venture.
We're being shut out of Indianapolis. We have 26 or 27 drivers here, and 8 of them would have been allowed to run Indianapolis. What would we do with the other 20 guys? Just send them home?
CART took its powerful teams and headline drivers to Michigan for the US 500.
The winner of this year's Indy 500, can he take the same satisfaction as any prior champion?
No, absolutely not. And he will know that.
I don't mean it's a hollow victory, but it's certainly not the same level of competition that you'd have otherwise.
Tony George is saying he's going to make stars overnight, okay? I say he won't.
The first Indy 500 champion of the IRL era has a remarkable story. Buddy Lazier, racing with a broken back, passing 2 cars over the final 10 laps for the 3rd closest finish in race history. Already in Michigan, the US 500's more experienced and famous field had suffered an embarrassing 12-car wreck on the pace lap. IndyCar racing remains strewn with the debris of this feud between championship auto racing teams, CART, the 18-year-old group of IndyCar owners, and Tony George's Indy Racing League, built on the race that his family owns.
I want to have some input into the direction that the sport goes. That's paramount. I think this institution has to have some input.
The IRL also says it wants to lower racing costs and make the sport more democratic.
It isn't trying to help out the little guy, or it's for control of what has the potential of being an enormous business.
So it's not giving
and the rest
American...
of it is so much hooey.
25 and 8, meaning there are 25 spots in the Indianapolis 500 locked in for the IRL's full-time competitors, which left 8 spots open for anyone else. So the CART teams, they could have used those 8 spots if they really wanted to. But the CART teams boycotted the Indianapolis 500 and ran their own race at Michigan on the same day called the US 500. Not only were the stars and cars in Michigan, but the sport has never been the same, and the fan base was torn apart at the perfect time for NASCAR to capitalize. Eventually, the 25 and 8 rule wasn't necessary, and the teams came back to the speedway where they belong, and where, of course, they immediately started winning again. Later than it probably should have, the series also became one again, and here we are 14 years since unification, and some team owners in the series want full-time entries guaranteed a spot in the 500 again. Fantastic.
The big Roger Penske. Where in the hell was Roger Penske made? Right here at this damn racetrack. He damn sure didn't make this place like A.J. Foyt didn't, or Wilbur Shaw, or whoever. And when I'm sick and tired of hearing the crap, and I'll tell you why, because like Mario, like they made Indianapolis, they made you know what I'm talking about?
So that'll do it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Make sure you stay tuned for more coverage during Indianapolis 500 month.
I got problems on problems on problems on problems on problems on problems I solve them. I run through the money, the pressure be calling. Left on my blessings, I feel like I'm falling. The birdie is back, tell me I'm garbage. I'm going through something, that's why I ain't calling. Phone in progression, it's all that I wanted. The phone in affection, I summon it.
You just don't know what Indy means.
Dub it. Why you be all in my line about nothing? Why won't you go get you $1 or something? Don't hang with a line for nothing. I see that we different, you riding, I double. I don't do discussions on bragging about